Welcome to a new episode of Distro History, the series where we explore the origins and evolutions of the most important Linux distributions. Today, we're diving into the fascinating history of MCC Linux, the very first Linux distribution ever created. It was 1992. Linus Torvalds had released the first Linux kernel just a year before, and the small but growing community of open-source enthusiasts was eager to experiment with this new operating system. However, the process of installing Linux was far from user-friendly. Back then, you had to manually collect the kernel, the new tools, libraries, and other necessary components, then compile and configure everything by hand. This was a daunting task, especially for those who weren't deeply familiar with Unix-like systems. MCC Linux, developed by Owen LeBlanc at the University of Manchester Computing Centre. MCC Linux, named after the university's computing center, was a pioneering effort to simplify the installation process for Linux. It was the first distribution that came as a complete package, making it much easier for users to get a working Linux system up and running. One of the standout features of MCC Linux was its simplicity. Unlike later distributions that came with a plethora of software options, MCC Linux was incredibly bare bones. It didn't come with X, the graphical interface that we often take for granted today. Users were provided only with the essential components, the Linux kernel, basic new utilities, and the tools needed to get a basic system running. This minimalist approach was intentional, designed to appeal to users who needed a functional Linux environment without the complexity of unnecessary extras. For those who wanted to experiment with a graphical environment, MCC Linux could be paired with x86, which at the time was at version 2.0. However, x86 wasn't included in MCC Linux by default, reflecting the distribution's focus on providing a simple, command-line-driven experience. This also meant that MCC Linux was extremely lightweight, making it accessible even to users with very limited hardware resources. MCC Linux was distributed on floppy disks. Yes, those old 3.5-inch diskettes. The entire distribution fit on a handful of these, making it accessible even to users with limited resources. The installation process was straightforward, with a basic script that guided users through setting up the system. This was revolutionary at the time because it lowered the barrier to entry for many who wanted to explore Linux but were intimidated by the technical challenges. Another important aspect of MCC Linux was its influence on future distributions. While MCC Linux itself was relatively short-lived and eventually faded as other distributions emerged, it set the precedent for what a Linux distribution could be. It showed that Linux could be packaged in a way that made it accessible to a broader audience, laying the groundwork for the more user-friendly distributions that followed. Though MCC Linux is largely forgotten today, its legacy lives on. It was a key stepping stone in the evolution of Linux, helping to transform it from a hobbyist's experiment into a versatile and powerful operating system that would eventually conquer the world. So next time you fire up your favorite Linux distribution, remember MCC Linux, the humble distro that started it all. Catch you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.